How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway. My name is Kenny Abbott with CBN Cyclevision Network. Alongside me, the one and only Pat Gonsalves, the voice of Daytona Speedway, here during Bike Week for as long as I can remember. I started coming here in 1985, and you'd been here for a while before that. So welcome to the Exhaust Noise Podcast. Always a pleasure to be in your presence, but certainly to have you on Cyclevision Network. We really appreciate it. A lot happening today at Daytona International Speedway. First day that the Daytona 200 practice groups have gotten underway. We've got the Mission King of Baggers. We've got the Roland Sands Mission Super Hooligans, as well as the new Bellisi Moto Twins Cup bikes went on practice first thing this morning. It was a little slick. The report was it was just a dirty track, and people were sliding all over the place. Didn't really get a lot of data. But once the second qualifying session, or the first official qualifying session, got rolling, it got pretty exciting. A lot happening, some great success, and some not so great, maybe tragic for some riders this early in the week. Let's go through some of the different practice groups we've seen and bring you guys some of the news from day one at Daytona International Speedway with Daytona Bike Week 2024. Pat, what were some of the things that caught your eye this morning?
Well, Kenny, first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be working with you on Exhaust Noise and getting all this information and the results out to our fans on the World Wide Web, on various social platforms. And I know we've got a big contingent of Canadian riders here and a lot of fans out there as well. We'll recap how the Canadians did. For a couple of them, not so good today, and we'll get into that a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But the first thing, of course, here, it was an absolute gorgeous day here at Daytona. Temperature in the mid to high 70s, a little bit of a wind, but mostly sunshine.
Yeah.
Conditions were great.
It's great. It's what you expect when you come to Daytona.
So. Well, you hope so, but as we know in the past, we've had our share of inclement weather. Some riders, their Daytona 200s are going to end early here on the Thursday. Sadly for veteran Canadian rider Alex Coelho out of Saint-Basile-le-Grand, Quebec, he crashed in the qualifying session, Kenny. It was very early, and over the years we've seen this happen so many times because the left side of the tire really gets most of the work here at Daytona.
Yeah.
If you go out there and you're just a little bit too aggressive on the throttle, you can low side or high side out. And that's exactly what happened to Alex Coelho on the Kawasaki coming out of the West Horseshoe right at the start of that qualifying session.
Yeah.
He got to a big high side, was down on the racetrack. Most of the riders did a great job of avoiding him as he was on the racetrack. But one of the last riders to go through, I think, may have clipped his feet. He was taken to Halifax Hospital here just a few minutes from Daytona International Speedway. Before we go off the air, we hope to get an update. But hopefully Alex is going to be okay. But in terms of riding further, I think his Daytona 200 is over. The bike was extremely damaged.
Yeah.
So that crew is going to be packing up. Very, very unfortunate for him.
Yeah, and I think one of the other big stories was the number 70 of Tyler Scott from the Vision Wheels M4 X-Star Suzuki team. He had a pretty bad get off, and it looked like he was on a hot lap. Looked like he may have been one of the maybe provisional pole, but he was definitely in the top there, and that bike was messed up pretty good as well. I think they were evaluating him, so we'll see how that goes. Again, if we get updates before the show's over today, we'll let you know that. Otherwise, we'll let you know first thing in the morning when we get some more information. But we pray for those guys and hope that their Daytona adventure will continue. Some of the other things that were sort of happening at the lunch break, there was a few sessions before lunch, and then during the lunch break, we were wandering around through the garages and everything. You can catch a lot of that. We went live from pit road during P1 practice, and what we saw was a lot of bikes that were starting to struggle, trying to get up to speed, and really it was a lot of the riders that hadn't had a lot of time here before, or riders that we knew got equipment put together at the last minute. The Yamaha riders, probably more famously for this round, I think a lot of people were really expecting them to be very fast and all three motorcycles had motors torn apart during the lunch break. So it looks like they got everything back together. They're starting now to work forward, but essentially they've lost 2 full sessions here, and there just isn't enough time to be able to do that and get up to speed. So we'll cross our fingers and hope that they get back up into the towards the top of the running order. But all 3 Yamahas were torn apart at the lunch break and looked like they were swapping motors. Larry Pegram was here. He was actually working with one of the Twins Cup riders, Sonia Lloyd. They have some mutual friends, but Sonia Lloyd, she started a little bit lower on the charts, and as we were talking, Pat, she actually moved up pretty well there in Twins Cup.
Yeah, again, a rider with limited experience here at Daytona. You do not learn this track even in a full race weekend. And Sonia had picked up, out from practice to qualifying, had picked up an incredible 6 seconds on her lap time and had actually moved inside of the top 20 in qualifying, but then crashed. Looks like she may have got a little bit wide coming through the fast left-hand dog leg and put it on the ground. The rider was up and okay, and the bike minimal damage. So I think she's going to be able to go in the second round of qualifying for that class in Twins Cup coming up tomorrow. But fortunate that she wasn't injured, and she'll come back tomorrow to continue the qualifying for Twins Cup.
Some other news: a lot of folks know that Chuck Giacchetto and the former race team that he was working with is no longer here in the paddock area, at least for this weekend. So he's working with Blake Davis this weekend. Blake Davis up to speed pretty quick here. Hasn't broken. I don't think he broke into the top 10 yet, but that's a good story where Chuck Giacchetto now working one-on-one with Blake Davis. And we should see a lot from him this weekend.
Yeah, and for Blake Davis, coming out of the Twins Cup Championship, and this is that ladder that MotoAmerica has built.
Yeah.
The Twins Cup champion, and just looking at the charts here in that final qualifying session, and again, we do have a second round of qualifying tomorrow here at Daytona. Look for most of these riders to improve on the times that they turned today in practice and qualifying. And then out of that session, after the second group of times tomorrow, they'll take the top 12 riders, and then they'll go into that final qualifying session to determine the pole sitter for the Daytona 200.
Yep.
And Blake Davis, 11th fastest. He was one of, I believe, somewhere in the vicinity of about 7 riders, all with lap times at 1:50. But certainly today, we saw an impressive run for the Suzuki GSXR 750 mounted riders. 4 of the top 5 best times belong to Suzuki riders. Richie Escalante quickest. You talked about Tyler Scott. He was on an absolute flyer when he put it on the ground at the chicane. His lap was 1:48.045. Richie Escalante had set a brand new record here for the class at Daytona, 1:47.833. And Kenny, we suspected that would be right around, and I think based on how fast they've gone here early, we could be looking at 1:48, maybe even a low 48 for the pole position tomorrow. And what that means, and we want to correct some information we gave out yesterday, where we said you had to be within 110% of the pole. It's actually 108. So based on the time that Escalante put up today, you have got to turn a lap at 1:56.460 or faster.
It's fast.
It used to be if you got under 2 minutes, you were in the field for the Daytona 200. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
And looking at the riders who were in the supposed slower group, Group B, only the top 10 riders out of that Group B session have gone fast enough to make it into the Daytona 200. There are over 20 riders tomorrow have got to find 2, 3, 4, and in some cases 5 seconds a lap if they want to race here on Saturday afternoon.
Including, and we may or may not see Alex Coelho, but Hunter Dunham on the Triumph, we were expected to see, more from him. We expected to see a little bit more of Anthony Fania. We expected to see more from Jessica Capizzi, Tony Blackhall. There's some riders that didn't make the cut today that are normally on the grid. I think that they're gonna go back tonight and start to really see where they can gain some time. Jessica Capizzi, she had her motor apart at the lunch break as well. So I think they're just trying to play some catch up. But it's gonna be interesting. And as you mentioned, Escalante already down to a 47.833. The only rider into the 47s, Tyler Scott, went 48.045, and then back to Hayden Gillum on the number 95 machine of 49.3. Another 49.3 from Joshua Heron, the only Ducati to break up that group of Suzukis. Bobby Fong was a 49.3, and then Xavi Flores on the changing teams this year onto the Yamaha, the Attack Yamaha team of 49.8. So a lot of riders in the 49s. Richard Cooper, the Triumph rider coming over from Europe, solid rider. I actually talked to his teammate at the lunch break, and Peter Hickman is really excited for his teammate. He says, "Yeah, I'm struggling to kind of get up to speed. This is the first time I've been here, and it really takes a lot to figure this place out. But Coop's ready to go. Coop could win this thing."
Coop was here, but that was back in 2008 where he finished in 5th place, and he's come back here with this factory-supported Triumph. Just comparing the times.
Ahead of Posh, we'll say.
And we underscored this situation where this track is so technical, so difficult, getting used to the banking, the high speeds. Even if you're a skilled rider like Peter Hickman, who's won 13 Isle of Man's championships and the fastest rider ever around the Isle of Man, his time, when you look here, was a minute 51.694. His teammate, Richard Cooper, a minute 49.983. So almost 2 seconds separating those two riders. Hickman is going to get faster, no doubt about it. How much faster? Maybe a minute 50, maybe a minute 49.
Yeah, and we were talking about drafting. He's used to running the Northwest 200, which, miles and miles of long road. So he says, "I'm used to the draft. I'm used to playing with the draft. I like the draft." That's not the issue. The issue is that this is 31-degree banking, and that we're going from those speeds. He actually compared the chicane to going 200 and some miles an hour down a back road in Ireland, and then having to come to a roundabout. And he says it feels the exact same way. He says we're at 200 mile an hour, we come to a roundabout, we go back to 200 mile an hour again, back up into the tri-oval. He says those things are fine to me. It's just so foreign, and just getting the bike up to speed and getting the bike dialed in. He says, "I'm okay mentally, figuring it out, but just getting the bike up to speed and getting the bike to handle the way I need it to around this place, that's been the trick so far." But obviously his teammate Cooper is figuring it out. So I think they're going to probably bring some of that data over, and hopefully they'll work together and get it rolling again. One of the other things I think that was notable, and obviously we can get to some of this stuff a little bit later on in the show, but Joshua Hayes on the CSU One Cure Yamaha. CSU stands for Colorado State University, where they're obviously trying to find one cure for cancer. And
for both humans and for dogs and cats and stuff like that. I actually ran into Josh Hayes at the MotoAmerica food hospitality area. And you find something new every time you go to the racetrack, Kenny. And I wasn't aware of this, and I think it's an absolutely brilliant idea. MotoAmerica has 2 big tractor trailers that are mobile kitchens, and they've got chefs and so forth. And for $20 a day, a rider or a crew member gets a continental breakfast and a hot lunch that they pick up there and take back to their pit area. So it's an absolutely brilliant idea. He was out of his leathers. He said, "I'm going to miss the qualifying today. We're putting the bike back together and we'll be ready to go." So as quick as some of these other riders have gone, Josh Hayes, I think, is going to show what he's made of. One of the winningest rider in MotoAmerica AMA competition. He'll be out on that Yamaha tomorrow for qualifying, and I wouldn't be surprised if he makes it through the time attack.
And it looks completely different. The Yamaha he's usually on is the Squid Hunters Yamaha, and people are used to seeing that. It's a green and white motorcycle this year with the CSU One Cure Yamaha team. And of course, his wife Melissa Paris is on the wrenches, leading the team from a mechanical perspective. So it's still a family effort, and they're putting together a really good show. And he was very, very relaxed this morning. And Joshua Hayes has been around this place a lot, and so I think he'll. If anybody's going to get back up to speed, it's going to be Josh Hayes.
And we got to Richard Cooper on the Triumph in 7th. Let's take you a little bit further back on that Group A session, 30 minutes. 8th fastest was Brandon Posh, the 2-time Daytona 200 winner. He's won it on a Yamaha. He won it on a Triumph, and now he's on a Suzuki. I think he'll be one of the first riders to win on 3 different brands. Stefano Mesa, I'm still trying to correct the pronunciation. For years we called him Stefano, but it is Stefano, like the tennis player Stefano Tsitsipas. Stefano Mesa on the Ducati, a minute 49.947. Looks like they were still sorting a few things out on the bike. I think he's got a little bit more pace, and we should see that tomorrow, but he was able to break into the 49s. He went faster than that here on his Kawasaki back in the fall.
And again, brand new motorcycle.
Yeah.
They just took ownership of that motorcycle. They just put it all together. So that's fast for someone who basically just took on ownership of a bike a couple weeks ago.
Brian Sharp and the crew at Boulder Motorsports have done just an amazing job, and they'll be running that Ducati at the Loudon Classic coming up in June. And then, of course, rounding out your top 10 in qualifying was Danny Eslick, a minute 50.156 for Eslick. Chatted with him briefly in the TOBC area. That whole ride came together very, very late. He said to me 2-3 weeks ago, I wasn't running in the Daytona 200 until Michelle Lindsay, who's there with the crew. And, Danny Eslick is right there. And then once you get outside of that top 10, we talked about Blake Davis, great young rider. I got to give a shout out to Carl Soltesz, Super Carl, one of the best privateers who, came up through the CCS and ASRA. I think he's a former ASRA national sport bike champion, moved to MotoAmerica and has been consistently knocking right around the top 10. But that is a solid first day qualifying session for Super Carl.
Yeah, he has great social media and a great fan following, and he's very approachable and has a lot of fun. He actually does a lot of off-track testing, or testing with small bikes and motards and everything else, and he's very, very entertaining. So good to see Carl, Super Carl, from the Midwest Championship Cup Series region on that number 60 machine. The livery is still the same on that Suzuki, so we look forward to him. And if he could break into the top 10, as we were talking earlier, that would really be a great result for him. And I think he'd go home very, very happy to break into the top 10.
Yeah, and of course, Time Attack, where we take the fastest 12 riders, he's got a shot at making it into Time Attack.
Yeah.
We talked about the Yamaha team, 3 riders who won the World Endurance Championship last year, coming here to Daytona for the first time. Kenny, I don't think we covered it on our preview show yesterday, but a year ago, those 3 riders were watching the Daytona 200 and joking with their team manager, who said to them, if we can win the World Endurance Championship, what would your bonus or prize be? He said, we would like to go race in that Daytona 200. And sure enough, they end up capturing the 2023 World Endurance Championship. 2 of those riders, Haneke and Fritz, came here to Daytona, as we've covered, to work with Chuck Giacchetto just to learn the racetrack. And they got in as many laps as they could over the weekend. They've come back here, and they're faster than the 3rd member of that team, Nicolo Canepa. Canepa struggled a little bit today simply because he was trying to learn that racetrack in a big, big hurry. I think he got going a little bit better towards the end, and he should be much faster tomorrow. Yeah. But looking at where the Yart riders ended up, Karl Haneke out of the Czech Republic in 13th, and Marvin Fritz in 17th, and sandwiched in between those 2 Yart riders was Teague Hobbs on the Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki, and David Anthony, veteran rider, was 15th fastest.
Yep. And right behind Marvin Fritz was Matt Truelove, part of the Truelove brothers effort on the They're on another Suzuki GSXR 750, and those two guys were going pretty good. We talked to them during the first practice session, and they were trying to get as much data as they could. They had Matt had a pretty good accident here back in the fall for the ASRA weekend. He was beat up pretty good, and he was getting better, and then he had another crash where he injured his left hand again. So he says he's a little bit sore, his ribs are a little bit sore, but he thinks he's going to be able to put a lot of that out of his mind when it comes race time, and he thinks he's got a little bit more time left in him here. So we'll see how he does. But Matt Truelove there in 17th, right ahead of Ben Young, who was one of the previous AMA Pro Superbike Supersport riders, one of the Canadians that's come down.
Yeah, and Ben Young coming off his latest 3 Canadian Superbike championships. He did run earlier in his career in the Daytona 200 a number of times, so he certainly knows the racetrack. But these are 2 brand new Suzuki GSXR 750s that Trevor Daly, his co-rider on that Team Battle Axe, both on Bridgestone tires.
Yep.
So 2 brand new motorcycles. Unfortunately, their tire test day on Tuesday was washed out at Jennings, so I think that put them behind the 8 ball a little bit. And speaking of Trevor Daly, he was 27th fastest, a minute 52.9. So I think he was hoping to go quicker. We'll see if he can pick up the pace tomorrow. But Ben Young, 18th fastest, a minute 51.222, has an outside shot of making it a time attack.
Yeah.
But if you can make it in that fastest 12, you have really, really done well here at Daytona, considering the depth of the field.
Yeah, and speaking of the depth of the field, back in 20th was Gus Rodeo, who is coming up from the Junior Cup and Twins Cup. So Gus Rodeo is right there in 20th, just ahead of Taylor Knapp, who makes a return on a Triumph. Peter Hickman was back there in 22nd. We talked about the Yart riders. Nicolo Canepa on the number 65 machine was 23rd, just ahead of P.J. Jacobson on one of the new Ray Hall Ducatis. So P.J. Jacobson 24th, just ahead of Harry Truelove, Matt's brother, who qualified 25th this afternoon with a 152.539. And then we get into a couple other Canadians, right? Trevor Dion.
Yeah, Dion, I think, was struggling a little bit with the Ducati. I ran into Richard Chambers, and we had a good chat with Araldo Faraci. And Dion coming into turn 1, I don't know if he just missed his braking mark or there was some issue with the bike, but he overshot turn 1, tried to get it slowed. He did for a while, but then he got high-sided off the bike. I think he was okay. He walked away from it, but there was some damage to the bike. So Trevor Dion, former Canadian sport bike champion, 26th, he's got some time to make up. And then we haven't talked a great deal about their efforts today, but I think a disappointing day for the Ray Hall Ducati team. Again, another brand new team, brand new motorcycles. They did test at Jennings a few weeks ago. The test went very, very well.
Yeah.
But Daytona is not Jennings GP, and I think all of the teams struggled today. P.J. Jacobson, you said, fastest, 24th at a minute 51 and change, but then Kayla Yakoff didn't seem quite comfortable on the bike, and then Corey Alexander was 30th, and Kayla was 28th. So they're not going to be happy with those efforts, and I know that Ben Spies and the crew are going to be working to try to fix whatever was ailing that team, because they're capable of running a lot faster than that.
And honestly, I think they were on a different tire. We'll double check tomorrow morning, but I think they're on a different tire than what they're used to running on. So that may have something to do with settings and everything else. But chances are they were testing on this tire at Jennings, and they should be going well on it. But I wasn't very surprised to see P.J. Jacobson the fastest of the 3 Ray Hall riders, but I was surprised to see him that far down the list. I was surprised to see Kayla Yakoff faster than Corey Alexander, to be honest, but it's good to see Corey Alexander on a Ducati. We all know Richie Alexander, his uncle, who's been around, and he's a former 750 Supersport champion, and their family has run Ducati Kawasaki dealerships for a long, long time in the Hudson Valley of New York, just north of Manhattan there. So it's actually, and Corey's raced everything but a Ducati to this point. So it's actually good to see him on a Ducati. It blends well with the family brand, and I'm not gonna assume that he's gonna be that far down the list for very long. I think they're gonna shake some things out overnight. I think they're gonna come back tomorrow with much better qualifying, because those three riders should be much farther up the list when we look at some of the other riders that are ahead of them. So we're going to expect some bigger and better things for them tomorrow. Trevor Daley, though, was right there behind Dion. Danilo Lewis, the number 94 machine, former Brazilian Superbike champion. He's been running the stock 1,000 class for the last few years. He's also done some ASRA stuff. So Danilo Lewis, is very fast. We usually don't see him on a 600, so good to see him. He's on a Yamaha for Team Brazil. His fastest lap today was a 53.155. And then you go back to a couple other Kawasaki's, Jason Waters, Max Anglis, who didn't have a time, Joshua Hayes, and Jason Farrell, who didn't have a time.
Yeah, so look for Max Anglis, very fast rider here. He's certainly capable of laps at 1:50.
Yeah.
He'll get a shot at it in the second round of qualifying tomorrow. Josh Hayes, we talked about his efforts where he sat out qualifying. They're getting that bike prep. And Jason Farrell, no qualifying time for Jason Farrell.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good rundown, Kenny, through the first round of Daytona 200 qualifying for Group A. And now let's flip over to Group B that wrapped up their session here at about 4:15 this afternoon, a little bit before we came on the air. And Diego Perez, 135, went back and forth.
Yeah, where did he come from?
With Maximilio Girardo. And in the end, 1:51.767, fastest time out of the, quote, slower group. But that was not slow at all. That's a time that would have put him, I'm thinking, somewhere inside of the top 20 for the riders who were there in Group A.
Yeah, for a long time in Group B, there was only 5 or 6 riders that were even close to being able to make the qualifying cutoff, and then all of a sudden, there was a block of riders that just started moving up the chart. So Perez ended up throwing down a 1:51.767, the fastest lap in that Group B. The next fastest was Girardo, as you mentioned, on the Suzuki, a 52.4. So there's 7/10 of a second there. And then back to Eli Block on the number 29 machine, who had a pretty good run at it. But again, he started the session back in 12 to 15th place in that session, just worked his way back up and put together some really good laps and started stringing them together. And that's really what it takes here. And then a couple other Canadians there just outside the top 3. Sebastian Tremblay was put down a pretty good lap.
Yeah, no surprise. Tremblay has been here before. He's a multi-time Canadian sport bike champion who has moved up to Superbike. 1:54.384, a respectable time, but again, capable of going faster. Sam Guerin, who has been racing Superbike, back on a Kawasaki, he was 5th fastest at 1:55.014. And then Brad McRae, 1:17. McRae was actually slower towards the end of the session. In the last couple of laps, he was able to turn that 1:55 to make it in.
Yeah, Tony Storniolo, one of the Midwest ASRA riders. He actually had Tony Storniolo. Good to see him in the field. He deserves to be in the field. He's raced here several times. He's been in the 200. He was not very happy about his lap times or the handling of his motorcycle. And then back to Maverick Sear, another Canadian rider on the Triumph. Looks like they got that thing going in the right direction, but just needs a little bit more time now.
Yeah, well, Maverick, I think that is got to be very close to his fastest lap ever. He came here last October for the first time, had a number of top 10 finishes in the ASRA expert events, and they put this ride together with the help of an organization called Road to Racing that started out helping a lot of Canadian drivers, including Matt Clark, who's going to be racing in one of the open wheel support class races in St. Petersburg this weekend. But Maverick is the very first motorcycle racer that Road to Racing has helped. So there was a bit of a fundraising effort, and then the idea was to celebrate just a great gentleman who is an amazing friend to me by the name of Chris Ellis. He was a flat track racer, a road racer, and for years headed up Triumph Motorcycles in Canada. And as we said on the preview show, was the guy who really brought Triumph back to the Daytona 200 with a number of different Triumph efforts, including the year they had Elena Myers, Jason DeSalvo, and Kenny Reedman all on Triumphs. Of course, that eventually led to Danny Eslick's win in 2014 and more recently Brandon Posh. But Maverick, I think they'll be happy with that. I think they feel they probably have some more speed left in the machine. I know they were playing with gearing and, in fact, had reached out to Michelle Lindsay and the folks at TOBC to see if they had a 42 tooth sprocket because the gearing wasn't quite right with the Triumph. But his time will get him in the Daytona 200. Rigo Salazar on a Kawasaki, another rider in the minute 55s. And then, you know, we talk about the name riders and the top teams, Kenny, but here's a guy, Gary Jankowski, who has been racing for years and years. He races in ASRA. He races in Wira. And he is on a Kawasaki, and good to see his time was the last of those riders in Group B who have qualified fast enough that they're not going to get caught out by that rule with MotoAmerica that says here at Daytona, you've got to be within 108% of the pole time. And that time was absolutely brilliantly fast by Richie Escalante.
And according to MotoAmerica, it was a Daytona 200 lap record. So
Indeed.
A minute 57.833 is the bar. Now, that being said, the overall track record is held by Stefano Mesa, a minute 44.0. So it's still about 3.5 seconds slower than the overall track record. But keep in mind, the overall track record was on 1,000, approaching 200 miles an hour, and the 600s are somewhere north of 185 miles an hour. So it's there's a little bit of difference by the time you get around this 3.51 mile race course.
So Kenny and Gary Jankowski, the minute 55, he should be in.
Yep.
Beyond that, there are a whole bunch of riders who have got to figure out how they're going to be able to go 2, 3, 4 seconds faster.
Tony Blackhall, Jessica Capizzi, Anthony Fania, Andrew Bowman. Obviously, again, we hope the best for Alex Coelho, Hunter Dunham. There's a lot of riders there that we really expected to be able to qualify, and they just didn't make it in today, but they do have another shot tomorrow.
Yeah, and there are a couple of other Canadian riders we're familiar with. Matthew Simpson, who is a fine young rider on the Yamaha, he was 20th in that qualifying session for Group B, a minute 57.911. He has got to find at least a second and a half, maybe 2 seconds tomorrow to make it in. And the other rider who is in there, Alex Michel, on the Speed Factory Kawasaki, fine Quebec rider. He was 16th fastest, and he is in at a minute 57 and change. So he's got to find over a second as well. As we look down that list, there's some very good riders, but the pace was so quick here today that I think it may have surprised some of those riders, and now they're struggling to try to make the field for the Daytona 200.
Yeah, it's a lot. A second at Daytona is a lot. It was interesting to say the least. And I actually felt bad. We were walking through the garage area during the lunch break, and I felt bad, trying to talk to anybody because everybody was thrashing and swapping motors, and for some reason this year it just caught everybody off guard. But I think they also realized how stacked this field is, and they're not going to be able to get away with losing a couple tenths here and there. Everyone's got to bring their best game, best motorcycle. The one of the qualifying sessions that just ended was the Super Hooligans, and I thought it was funny. We saw that MotoAmerica posted a story about Troy Herfoss, who is running the Indian this year in the Twins Cup, and they have a quote that says, "I've never been more scared in my entire life," said Troy Herfoss after his first couple laps at Daytona International Speedway here this morning. I found that just really hilarious. And the other story that they did was on Rocco Landers, who was riding a giant bagger for the first time. So it's interesting finding these two talents coming from really different backgrounds. The Rocco Landers was coming from Junior Cup and Twins Cup, and he was successful last couple of years on 600s as well in the super sport class. But bumping up to that bagger was really something big for him. And then you have Troy Herfoss, who's been used to riding the big superbikes and won the Australian Superbike Championship last year, and he jumps on a bagger, and they both have the same experience. It was pretty funny.
Boy, I was impressed with Herfoss learning this track and going as fast as he did. We'll get into the results here for the King of the Baggers qualifying that happened earlier this afternoon. But Kenny, let's go to the Mission or the Bellissimoto Twins Cup, where Gus Rodeo was quickest in qualifying on the Aprilia, the Rodeo Racing Robem Engineering Aprilia. Minute 56.257 has the provisional pole. They'll have their final qualifying session out here tomorrow. Dominic Doyle, the Giacomoto Yamaha Racing, Chuck Giacchetto doing a great job. Dominic Doyle on the Yamaha R7, a minute 56.599. So just about 0.3 of a second between those two riders. Every Dreyer on another Aprilia, the Top Pro Racing team. I think they're fielding about 8 riders in MotoAmerica in various classes this year. He was right there. And the aforementioned Rocco Landers on the Suzuki. This is the debut in Twins Cup for the new Suzuki GSX-8R. And that was an impressive run by Landers on the Revzilla Vance and Hines machine.
Yeah, just less than a second
He got
back
up there to run there. And again, that's a bike that's only going to get quicker. And how about a shout out to Ed Sullivan rounding out the top 5 on his Yamaha. Ben Glotty, another Aprilian 6th. Alessandro Di Mario on an Aprilian 7th. Caleb DeKirol on a Yamaha 8th on the number 51. So again, I think once we get to that Twins Cup race, as we've seen over the last few years, it is going to be 8, maybe 10 riders at least early, and then from there we'll see how it plays out. But likely a multi-rider battle, but they still have that second round of qualifying to go. And Rodeo doesn't have that much of a gap over a number of riders, so we could see a shuffling of the final positions.
Yeah, and shout out to the old guys. You know, Ed Sullivan on the Yamaha turns a 57.6. We saw him win several ASRA national championships last fall. And then you slide down to 10th place, the number 171 of Ray Hoffman at a 159.9. I had talked to him during the first qualifying session. He was struggling a little bit. You know, it takes a lot to kind of muscle a bike around this racetrack, but he's on one of the new Aprilia 660s from Righteous Racing, and they've been developing that. And his crew chief this weekend is the one and only Jody Berry. So he's got some help to go fast. He's using Jody Berry's crew to go. And the funny thing is they've sort of swapped roles, because Ray Hoffman was always part of Jody Berry's racing, and now they swap roles this weekend. And Ray Hoffman on the Aprilia running 10th with Jody Berry being his crew chief.
Kenny, let me just correct something I said earlier. Rocco Landers in Twins Cup is on the Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki. The sponsors we gave you for him earlier, that was, of course, for his ride coming up in the King of the Baggers class, where he had a pretty good run, where he'll be riding the Revzilla Harley-Davidson machine.
Yeah, they did list the same sponsors in Twins Cup as they did for the other
that was
classes.
an error that we didn't catch before we mentioned, but that's a great ride. And in fact, looking at his teammate Rossi Moore, very talented young rider who will be on the second of the Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzukis. He was 11th fastest, just failed to break the 2-minute mark. And so again, there's a young rider who's still learning the track, learning a brand new motorcycle as they prepare for the second round of Twins Cup qualifying that comes up here tomorrow morning.
Yeah, Tyler Duffy was right there as well. We mentioned Sonia Lloyd, also on one of the Yamahas, also part of Chuck Giacchetto's garage this weekend. Jeffrey Perk, who's been coming to Daytona International Speedway forever on the world famous number 31 Yamaha. Slide down through there. Joshua Cruz, Art Diaz, who's put 1 million laps around this place on the number 83 machine. Looks like I think everybody else, yeah, Trevor Standish with no time, and Jack Roche with no time on the Wrench Motorcycles Yamaha. Not as large of a field, but 27 motorcycles in that Bellissimoto Twins Cup race. And if it's anything like the previous Twins Cup races, we're going to probably see a 10-bike draft for about the first half of the race.
Yeah. Incredible racing, and the sound of all those twins coming into the tri-oval here at Daytona, particularly early in the race where you've got that swarming pack, is music to my ears.
Yeah. What's interesting is a few years ago you had a lot of Suzuki, the Suzuki SV650s, which have now been kind of swapped out. The Aprilia 660 took over as one of the more dominant machines in that class, along with the Yamaha R7. And so we see the Aprilias, the Yamahas, and now the debut of the new Suzuki GSX-8. And so a little bit of changing the guard there. We don't see any more SV650s, which were so dominant in that class just a couple years ago. So it's going to be interesting.
And on the victory podium at the end of either race 1 or race 2, I think we'll see one each of those 3 brands in Twins Cup. Good to have Suzuki back aboard, as you said. The SV650 was such a staple for road racing for so long. The bike just no longer, because a lot of them are older models, competitive with the new R7 or the Aprilia 650.
And speaking of new models in classes, I'm really, really excited about this Super Hooligans class, of course, sponsored by by Roland Sands Designs and Mission Foods, because not only do we have the Indians and the Harley Davidsons in here, we've got a couple BMWs. The Ducati has made its way back in. The KTM is there as well. There's the Yamaha 900 that's in there. So it went from a field of about 15 a couple years ago to now 36 riders entered in that class. This is going to probably be one of the best races of the week. Well, let's be honest, there's only 4 races this weekend, but it's going to be probably one of the better classes that's been developed over the last few years. I'm really excited to see this race.
Yeah, and my wife, Christine, who's our runner, if you will, from a guy who's been here at the Speedway for decades now, Doug Miner, and grabbed those sheets as the final qualifying session was going on when we started the podcast. And Kenny, we'll get to the Mission King of the Baggers qualifying, but how about that 20-minute qualifying that just wrapped up here about 20 minutes ago?
Yeah, the Super Hooligans. Yeah, Tyler O'Hara will go to the top of the list on the S&S Indian motorcycle. Not much of a surprise there. And Corey West has always been very competitive, but Corey West throws it down on his Salomon Harley Davidson to go second fastest. So good for Corey. 52.781 for Tyler O'Hara, and almost a full second faster, just over a full second faster than Corey West on the famous number 13 Salomon machine. Troy Herfoss, the Australian on the S&S Indian, will go third fastest, a minute 54.4. And then we go back to Travis Wyman on the number 10, again on another Salomon Harley Davidson. And rounding out the top 5, Jake Lewis on the number 85. He came in on a trailer during lunch break, so good to see him get that Salomon Harley Davidson back up into the top 5, a minute 55.050. Those are the only riders in the 55s. Everyone else, Hak Mazada, who's 6th fastest, he actually is his best time at 56.4. So we go from from first place qualifier of 52 to a 5th place qualifier of 55 back to 6th place where they're running 56s. Again, Hak Mazada on the Indian, Cody Wyman on a Harley Davidson on the number 34. And I was really excited to see Nate Kern on the number 9 BMW, getting BMW back involved as well. The interesting thing about that, we were talking about, he had to go back and forth. You know, that's a shaft drive motorcycle. He doesn't have sprockets. He can't just take sprockets off and change them. The only thing he can do is change the drive shaft, which has a rack and pinion system in it, and he only has 2 choices. So in his first qualifying session, he couldn't even get to 6th gear on the banking. He can only be in 5th, so he was going to go a little bit shorter gear, which is just a different pin basically. And so he was excited to get back out, and he's able to go 8th fastest here this afternoon on the BMW at a minute 56.563. And Nate Kern's one of the BMW development riders. Good to see him back in there. I used to race with him back in the Mid-Atlantic region, and then he moved out west, and he became real popular in the Midwest region. So just good to see him back and feeling good about his riding. Andy DeBrino was 9th, and then Hunter Dunham was 10th. Again, Hunter Dunham, one of the riders who came up through Junior Cup and Twins Cup. He's riding a Ducati, and his fastest time was a 57.123 on that Tampa Bay Ducati machine. 11th fastest was Hayden Schultz. Stefano Mesa on the Energetica from Tyler Cycle. That was an interesting ride for him as well. Did you get a chance to catch him out there with all the hooligans?
No, I couldn't hear the bike.
Exactly. But it was so funny because all the super hooligans are really, really loud, and you hear this whisper.
Yeah.
And all you really heard was just the energy from it, but no exhaust. It was really interesting. But they ended up, it looked like they were having a problem. But if you look at them if you go back and look at the bike in the garage, they have a indoor air conditioner that you would have for your house, and it has a 4-inch flex pipe that comes out, and it feeds into the back of a leaf blower, and the leaf blower is blowing into the engine.
Keep the battery cool because it gets hot, loses power.
Yep. And he came in during the first practice session, and it was beeping at him, and he says, "Why is it beeping?" And actually, if you want to see that clip, we actually did a live clip from pit road when he came in, and you could hear the bike beeping, and you could hear him talking to his crew. But it was about a 2.5 minute, maybe 3 minute clip of that whole session. So you can just look at that on Cycle Vision Network and see that whole interaction. But he didn't know why the bike was beeping at him, essentially because it was overheating and it was getting hot. So next to the motorcycle in the garage is a giant battery charger, which is charging the battery, which is also putting heat into it. And they have literally an air conditioning system on the other side to cool it while it's heating. So it was very interesting. One of the riders that I wasn't expecting to see, I just didn't see him on the entry list initially, was Nicolo Canepa from one of the Yamaha riders there, who was right behind Mesa with a 57.9.
Yeah, and he ended up getting up there to run 13th fastest.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons he entered the Super Hooligans class was simply to get some more track time and learn this track that would help his effort in the Daytona 200. Yeah. I'm sure he'll be going a whole lot faster during the second round of qualifying tomorrow. But when you look at these times, Kenny,
he's on one of the brand new NT09, so it's a great looking motorcycle.
So when you look at the time here for O'Hara, it's impressive, over a second quicker than Corey West. But that's out there in qualifying. When you got a pack of machines, I don't think he's going to be able to pull the breakaway on the rest of these riders. And again, like we said with Twins Cup, there's going to be a big pack of riders at least early in this race, and look for some of those other riders. Interesting, the first 7 positions are either Harley Davidson or Indian motorcycles. Then you've got a BMW, a KTM, and a Ducati, and then a little bit further down you've got Stefano Mesa aboard that Energica electric bike, and he might be able to blast from back in about row 4, where he's going to be starting, and, just go by a lot of those internal combustion machines off the start. So don't count out.
And then just hang the drafts.
Yeah. Yeah. Stefano Mesa on that machine, and of course he'll be on the Boulder Motorsports Ducati in the Daytona 200, and I think he will go even faster tomorrow, breaking into a 49, maybe even a 48.
Yeah, absolutely. Dominic Doyle was right there. He qualified 14th on another Yamaha. Tyler Duffy on the KTM was 16th. Going back through the field, a lot of great riders. CJ Cohen on the Suzuki qualified 28th at 2 minutes 11 seconds. Josh Coombs, and then Shalina Morena. She did not have a time from the Shalina Morena Racing. She was registered on a Ducati. Kevin Grimmel on a Harley Davidson, Jack Roach, and Joshua Siegel, none of which had times. So
hopefully whatever the problem was for all of those riders that forced them to miss the opening round of qualifying, they're back out here tomorrow morning at the racetrack.
Yep.
I know we want to bring in the guru of all things American flat track here for a quick preview, because he's certainly more in depth in his knowledge of what's going to happen here tonight under the lights and tomorrow night. But before we do that, let's quickly put a cap on King of the Baggers. I think maybe a surprise that Troy Herfoss, with his limited experience here at this racetrack, would top the opening round of qualifying against the likes of a Tyler O'Hara and Kyle Wyman, some of the other regulars in the Mission King of the Baggers class.
Yeah, at a minute 50.017, Pat, when we were here in the fall, there was a couple teams that were testing, and we were surprised but not surprised that those guys were doing really low 50s. We thought, man, when they come back here in the spring, they might do 59s. And here we are, a minute 50 flat, a minute 50.017. It's not a minute 50.8 or 0.9. It's a minute 50.019. They might be in the 49s tomorrow morning. And that's Troy Herfoss, who had never been here before. And again, the quote from MotoAmerica was that he was scared for his life on that SNS Indian motorcycle, but he qualified ahead of Kyle Wyman, the former champion on the number 33 Harley Davidson. He qualified ahead of number 29 Tyler O'Hara on the Indian, both of which were in the 1 minute 50 range. Wyman at a 50.197 and O'Hara a minute 50.599. Hayden Gillum on the defending Revzilla Motul Vance and Hines Harley Davidson with the number 1 plate, a minute 51.239. James Rispoli, 43, was fifth fastest, with Kyle Onsong back there in sixth. He was the BRL, one of the BRL champions. Travis Wyman was seventh. Rocco Landers, his first time on the big Harley Davidson, also from the Vance and Hines Revzilla Motul Harley Davidson team, was eighth fastest. Bobby Fong on an Indian was ninth fastest, and Corey West on the number 13 was 10th fastest. A little different than on that Super Hooligan, but they've got those Salomon bikes running really, really well this weekend.
A couple of riders to note who did not post a qualifying time this afternoon. Shane Narbonne, who won the Bagger Racing League Championship on a bike. I'm not sure if that bike is the same one they ran here. There was a turbocharged version of that bike.
Right.
But I think this may be a different machine that they brought here.
That's
to
the
Daytona.
bike that Jesse Janish is on.
Right.
The turbocharged, yep.
And then Ruben Zaus, of course, road race fans will know that name, now in his 40s, coming here to run the fueling parts machine. He did not get a time, so Ruben Zaus, hopefully whatever the issues were with that bike, they'll get it fixed overnight, and he'll be ready to go out here. And another one of the Mission King of the Baggers regulars, Max Flinders, the Mad Monkey Motorsports Indian, that he did not post the time. So if everybody's out here and gets in a qualifying time, we'll have 17 motorcycles lining up for our King of the Baggers opener here at Daytona. The first of those races goes out here tomorrow afternoon. The second will actually be after the Daytona 200 on Saturday around a 4 o'clock start. So if you're going to be coming out to the races here at the Speedway on Saturday, stick around after the 200 is over. And they've taken care of Victory Lane presentations, because we've got one final race to put a cap here on Daytona 2024 with that Mission King of the Baggers race.
Yep. And, of course, tickets still available for this weekend's races here at Daytona International Speedway. If you want to watch the races live, you can do that on MotoAmerica Live Plus. It's a simple subscription. Just go to MotoAmerica, and they have a subscription link. Go to MotoAmerica Live Plus, and you'll be able to subscribe there. I think it's $110 now that they've, now that we're into the season. And so that's the best place to watch from. You can get live timing and scoring through MotoAmerica as well. That's how we watch a lot of it from pit road on our mobile devices. Or if you're sitting there, you just turn your computer on and dial into MotoAmerica.com, and you'll be able to watch live timing and scoring. Pat, thanks again. We'll see you a little bit later on, hopefully at the flat track. Otherwise, we'll see you first thing tomorrow morning. We're going to bring in our friend Alan Matlock to talk about some dirt track. He's a massive dirt track fan. Come on over, Alan.
I'm going to give up the chair, and I'm going to go check to see how our good friend Alex Coelho is doing after that nasty crash at the West Horseshoe, and also try to get an update on some of the other riders who put it on the ground, including Tyler Scott, after a brilliant qualifying effort. Hopefully he's okay and ready to go tomorrow. Kenny, as always, a pleasure.
Thanks.
We look forward to capping off our first race action tomorrow night when we're back on, and then, of course, the big day here on Saturday with the 82nd running of the Daytona 200.
Yep, sounds great. These guys are going to switch microphones real quick. Again, we appreciate you guys being here. Make sure you follow Cycle Vision Network, CVN, and share it with all your friends. If go back through the live feeds that we posted this afternoon, we're trying to post a lot of that stuff live as it's happening. So you'll see a bunch of photos from P1 this morning, and as we were starting practice, we were bringing you live footage from pit road. So we bring in Alan Matlock. You might be able to find him. Where can we find Alan Matlock's photos and everything that you post online? You have a great Facebook following. What are some of the Facebook pages that people can follow to catch the history of motorcycling that you're posting?
One of the page. Thank you for that warm invitation and to follow behind Pat. It's an honor. I'm an administrator on road racing in the new millennium. It's on Facebook. I also contribute to flattrack.com on Facebook. I'm into drag racing. So my town of Rockford, Illinois, there's a drag strip there not too far away from it called Byron Dragway, and it's Rockford/Byron Dragway, 1964 to today. So I'm involved in a lot of things, but I'm a master of none.
We talk a lot. Alan was gracious enough to ride down here from the Chicago area with me, but we talk a lot about dirt track as well. So there's a couple of things that you're looking forward to tonight and tomorrow from the dirt track series. Let's start with Jared Mees.
Well, interesting story about Jared Mees. He's on his way to working on his 10th championship, which is a very, 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 very impressive feat in the world of flat track. There's a lot of guys who have come close. I believe right now he's tied with Chase Springsteen, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken, but again, to be at number 9, he's done a lot for the sport. By doing a lot for the sport, he's also a promoter with his wife, Nicole Mees. They sponsor Lima, if I'm not mistaken, and also one of the races that I love to work at, which is the Springfield Mile in Springfield, Illinois.
So, and Lima's a half mile, right? And then the
Lima's a half mile, and Springfield's a mile. It's the fastest mile in the United States.
It's amazing. If you've never been to flat track, I would suggest going at least once. I would also suggest make sure you bring earplugs, earbuds of some kind. It is very, very loud, and if you've got a nice slick jacket to keep some of the dirt off your brand new white shirt, I would suggest that as well. But here at Daytona, we're running the short track, and they used to run the short track here, or I think they used to run the half mile over at Municipal Stadium. Is that right?
Right.
Which was right up the street here, and that was a very famous dirt track oval, and everyone would go over there at the end of the day from the road race and big grandstands and everything else. And sadly, the event has shrunken down a little bit from a fan perspective. There's still a lot of fans there, but they're not filling the grandstands that they used to over at Municipal Stadium. But because it's here at the Speedway, there are a lot of campers here, and they can literally just walk right out the tunnel, and they're at the flat track. So we're going to leave here in a little bit. We're going to go over there and check out the Progressive AFT flat track guys. See our friends Cameron Gray and everybody over there. Who are some of the other riders over there that we should be looking for?
Well, just looking at results from practice and qualifying from the short track over there, Sammy Halbert on an XR 750. Briar Ballman, I believe the Ballman brothers were mentioned yesterday by Pat. We've got Davis Fisher, Jared Vanderkoy, fast boy from Illinois, Dallas Daniels. He's going to be in the hunt. Dallas finished second in the championship last year, so I know he's looking to kind of knock Jared down.
We also saw him on a road race bike last fall.
You did see him on a
watch for that transition. He was very, very fast.
I think Daniels is one of the guys who, and again, this is my personal opinion, I believe Daniels is one of the guys who can make the transition like another hero of mine, Nicky Hayden. It's just my personal opinion, my personal belief. But with the backing that he has, I believe he's the guy that could do it.
And Mies was down there a little bit, right? 7th or so on the number
Mies
one.
is down to 7th in the first qualifying session of Super Twins. But some new names in Super Twins. Well, a few new names. Morgan Mishler, he's on a Yamaha MT-07. And another rider that's, Kobe Carlisle, he raced singles for a while, but now he's making the transition up to Super Twins as well. Cameron Smith is there. There's a lot of the usual suspects in Super Twins. I haven't had a chance to look at singles yet, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be a great battle as well.
And what's the significance of singles? Singles to me really it's the next crop, right? It's sort of super sport to superbike.
Correct.
It's the last 2 nights we've had amateur racing going until about 9-10 o'clock at night, and really those amateurs, when they first transition over to the pro ranks in progressive AFT flat track, they are going to transition over into a singles class. The cool thing about the singles class, Alan, is that there's a host of manufacturers. Virtually all of the motorcycle manufacturers that are making a single are in that class. And so you've got the 4 Japanese manufacturers, you've got Husqvarna, you've got KTM, you've got all these motorcycles in there, and it makes it very, very competitive. And what they do is they essentially, just like with super sport racing, they have quite a bit of ways to pair them so that they're essentially all identical horsepower and weight and everything else, and it comes down to rider. And it makes it very, very competitive. The cool thing is you get someone riding at that level, and then once they're ready to bump up to the twins class, they're so talented.
Amen. And again, me being from Illinois, I'm happy to see when looking at the first qualifying session, Chase Satoff from Hillsborough, Illinois is at the top. So again, we've got a fast boy from Illinois on the top. Dalton Gaultier, he's second on the KTM. He's from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. We've got Travis Pettin from Ramona, California. And he's on a KTM, but still within the top 4. You got the 4 different manufacturers represented.
And talk about Cody Kopp a little bit. Cody Kopp's going to defend that number 1 plate this year.
Cody Kopp is one of the guys who, again, there's always a discussion about where the next American MotoGP or World Superbike guy or whatever it could come from. Cody Kopp, in my opinion, is one of those guys. I rate Cody Kopp the same as the MotoGP guys rate Pedro Acosta. And if you follow Pedro Acosta's rise to fame, has been through KTM. But Cody Kopp, in my opinion, could do that job. He could go over there and learn the bikes. And he could be one of those Americans who also make the transition from flat track to road racing to whatever he wanted to do. And he's got a great family following.
And one of the females in the class will be Shayla. Shayna Texter.
Yes, she's if I'm not mistaken, she is also running tonight. She's down in 21st, but again, it's first qualifying. Anything can happen. A couple changes, she could move right up the ladder.
Yeah, great. So this is Alan Matlock. Make sure you follow him on all of his social media platforms. We're both posting live on CVN, Cycle Vision Network, throughout the weekend. So we appreciate you hanging out with us. Make sure you follow and share, and let's try to grow this sport. We are here really to support the rest of the media. There are a million great media outlets out there for motorcycle racing, and we're here to kind of pump up all of them. We all have influence over our own little bubble, so we appreciate you guys following us and liking us. And it doesn't go without saying that we appreciate you, and let us figure out a way, or let us to be part of your life, and bring you some live footage that is not being covered behind the scenes because they just don't have the time to do it. But throughout the weekend, we're going to bring you live behind the wall footage. We're going to put cameras right in the face of some of these riders when they're jumping off the motorcycles. We're going to be in the media center, and we're going to do those recaps right here at the end of the day with the one and only Richard Chambers and of course Pat Gonsalves, the voice of Daytona. And so again, we appreciate you hanging out with us. We're just over an hour here, so thanks for hanging in there. We do have sponsorships available, by the way, for the rest of the season. So if you're interested in being part of this Cycle Vision Network Live exhaust noise program, hit us up. We'll see you soon. Take care from Daytona Beach.
Bye. Big thanks to this guy right here for everything he does. I appreciate him so much, and it's helping him out is the least that I could do.
We'll see you at the track, at the flat track a little bit later on. Take care now. Check that real quick.